Bianchi.
Here.
Commissioner Chad Fuller. Commissioner Joshua Ayler.
Here.
Commissioner Bob Steiger. Commissioner Christopher Sipple.
Here.
All right, thank you. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
Chairman, I request that we move items 15/16, they're together, to the first item on our public hearing, so it would come in front of item number 11, and then I move to approve like that, please.
Wonderful. I have a recommended motion by Vice Chairman Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bianchi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll go ahead and at this time and move to agenda item number 7, which is communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters not on the agenda. The Commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Is there anybody here that would like to speak under those circumstances? Okay, seeing none. Also, I'd like to let you know that there are cards in the back of the room at the table. If you are here and wish to speak on any item, if you are not the applicant, we'd request that you go ahead and fill one of those out and bring it up to the table up here so that we can get you on the record. We'll go ahead and go to our public hearing consent portion of the agenda. The consent public hearing items will be heard at one public hearing. After the consent public hearing, these items may be approved by a single motion. At the request of a member of the commission or staff, an item may be removed from consent calendar and may be heard and acted upon separately. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent public hearing and approved under a single motion. On this agenda, we have item number 8, or agenda item number 8, which is S1206. It's a preliminary plat and open space plan for the Legacy, located at the southwest corner of Greenfield and Brooks Farms Road. Agenda item number 9, which is S12-07. It's a preliminary plat for Bridges East 3 through 4, located west of the northwest corner of Wrecker and Ocotillo Roads. And also agenda item number 10, which is UP1208. It's a conditional use permit for approximately 660 square feet of real property located west of Gilbert Road and south of Warner Road to permit a wireless communication 65-foot high monopalm facility in the shopping center district. I don't have any, I'd like to open the public hearing. I don't have any public hearing cards. Anybody wishing to speak on these matters? Does anybody want a formal presentation on any of these matters from staff? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for a motion.
Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented, items 8, 9, and 10 tonight.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chairman Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Chairman Peterson, second by Commissioner Sipple. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The agenda items pass unanimously. That'll take us to the public hearing non-consent portion of the agenda. The non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support of or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. So with that, we'll moving things around. We'll move to agenda items number 15 and 16 first, which is case GP1207, a minor general plan amendment to change the land use classification of approximately 15.3 acres of real property located at the northwest corner of the Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way and South Wrecker Road from single-family detached SFD land use classification to public facility institutional. And we'll also hear at the same time the companion zoning case, which is agenda item number 16, Z12-20. With that, I'll open the public hearing and welcome Ms. Maria Cadavid.
Thank you, Chairperson Wittmann and commissioners. Thank you for moving these items at front. I brought these applications to you last month, and there are two, a minor general plan amendment and the exhibits that I just distributed. We received them this week, and those reflect a reduction in site from 15.3 as it was advertised and noted on the report to 12.9 gross acres. This project is a charter school, and the reason that they requesting the rezoning is because the current zoning is single family. A single family detached, which does not permit a school facility, either private or public. So they needed to do that anyways. They didn't go with a single family 6 because the setbacks were too stringent. So the public facility institution, which in the past have been granted for the larger educational facilities as well, or public parks, was another option for them. This is the aerial map, and it shows the outside boundaries, shows the entire Chale station. The piece that we are talking and is subject of these two applications is this one, known as Parcel 16 in the overall Chale Station Master Plan. The next item reflects the land use exhibit that now shows the 12.9 acres versus what you have in the packet. Reason for the reduction in size is cost of the facility and the fact that there was, or there is, a irrigation ditch that traverses these 2 acres in this direction and was too expensive or unresolved the issue of how it was going to be treated or tiled, so the applicant decided to go with reducing and avoid that acreage. That's why all the exhibits were revised to reflect that, were covered by the public notification requirements because we advertise and publish more acreage than less. This shows this new parcel 16 with a reduced acreage in relationship with the remainder of the overall master plan. This constitutes a zoning exhibit that will be adopted with the ordinance. The next exhibit shows the development plan. When we talk about the development plan, we incorporate parcels that have been already developed or that we already have some sort of development plan specifics already approved or in the works. As I expressed at the study session, in the entire Chale station, we have the design, street sections, landscape requirements for all the streets, arterials, collectors, half miles, the loop, etc., which is a good thing to have because the applicants know what their responsibility for off-site improvements are. And lastly but not least, this is the key sheet that shows what type of streets go where. That's also part of the ordinance. And the last one shows how the open space system is made up and how it will be complementing each other, open, green, public spaces. These exhibits are the ones that will be adopted with a revised ordinance for the entire Chale station. As I indicated, and Commissioner Sippel asked me prior, although this is a public school charter, and they chose not to go through the Design Review Board technical review. We asked for those plans, and right now we have distributed to engineering, traffic, planning, landscaping reviewer. Engineering already issued comments, and mostly are technical. I understand that traffic will have more to review. They submitted a second traffic impact study. It's not due the review until the 13th of this month. And if any issues, they will have to be resolved before we go to council on January the 17th. Safety is a important issue in the school at this location, so that will have to be, so they even submitted color elevations. So we're doing pretty much the same review as if we're going to the Design Review Board, but without to present it at the public meeting. That's all I have to say. Staff supports the rezoning and the general plan amendment, and if the commissioners have any questions for staff, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Ms. Cadavid. Is there any questions or comments for staff? I guess, okay, Commissioner Bianchi?
No, I guess my original question was the waiving of the technical review, so I guess we did get an explanation on that, but it caught my attention because I don't know if that's commonly done. I don't see that in our our packets very often, so I was curious
Correct,
if...
correct. Public schools in the school districts, some of them we have reviewed them through DRB, some others have chosen not to. This project expressed that they were in a hurry to submit construction documents, and we said we'll accommodate that. Still, they are doing the same submittal. The only thing is that we won't be writing a report or presenting it to the Design Review Board, but all the reports and technical data, it is being requested, and the applicant have already submitted this week that we're finishing, and was distributed and is undergoing review. In fact, engineering issued their comments already.
So it will be thoroughly reviewed. It wasn't just to get it expedited through a process.
No, it will be reviewed as if we're going to a DRV technical review.
Okay. And the second question I had was in regards to the notification we received from Union Pacific.
Correct.
Any of their concerns? You know, my questions are, you know, they obviously were notified since I guess they were property owner there. And then, do you know if the applicant reached out to the railroad prior to this as part of the due diligence?
I don't know, because they just submitted yesterday. We got input from the Higley School District that was immediately transferred to the applicant. We can still establish that communication after this meeting before going to council. And the other item that I wanted to clarify is that this site is under the contour lines of Area 3. Of the overlay for air. So that, although it's a given in the code, we'll make sure that we include that provision in the ordinance, so it's clear to the applicant that as part of this technical review, their architect will have to issue a statement that the exterior walls, windows, etc., meet those requirements for noise abatement.
And that was my question, was if any of the, since we got this so late, if any of their comments or concerns could be put in as part of a stipulation.
They will.
Condition.
They will. It's a given by code, but we want to make sure that it's clear and in front of the applicant before they go to council.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have a couple of questions. I'm glad you brought up the Union Pacific email that we received. I assume that engineering and traffic engineering has reviewed it, and do they have, I assume not, based on this coming forward with the staff recommendation of approval, but do they have any concerns about the traffic and the potential conflict with the railroad?
They are reviewing, and I understand that since they changed the layout with the reduction in acreage, they are undergoing like a first review this time.
Okay.
So they said that the access, I talked to the traffic engineer this afternoon, that the access is pretty much the same, but they have some issues on internal circulation that they will have to connect with their traffic engineer and resolve those. So it's not I mean, they are reviewing it. They may have communications. They may need to ask for revisions to the site plan and the internal circulation. And that is, safety requirements will be enforceable, either through this review or to see these reviews. And we prefer to have those already taken care of before we move this item on to council in January. January the 17th is the council meeting. So we expect to have those resolved before. Nothing definite. I haven't received anything in writing yet, but I just ask in general what their feel was for the revised site plan and circulation.
Oh, I guess I'm struggling again with the fact that this really hasn't been vetted yet. It really hasn't been approved yet. Yet we're trying to hear a case and make a recommendation on a case, and we have some opposition that's talking about site-specific type issues, and we don't have a site plan really to look at to see how those issues might be vetted and or addressed. And so, am I the only one here struggling?
No, ma'am.
I'm struggling too.
Okay.
Seems to be a lot of uncrossed Ts and undotted Is.
And asking for, and I know that we just recently heard another school, and I know it was under different circumstances. It was a use permit, so it was very, very different than the zoning process. However, these issues still remain the same, especially when there's some opposition from the Union Pacific Railway, as well as just changes in the plan last minute, and not having final approval. So, okay.
Chairwoman.
Yes,
I mean,
Commissioner
if I
Sippel.
could just add to that, and it took a couple months for that previous school to go through this
Right.
body as well, if I recall, it came back a couple times. And, you know, I would just have to agree, I have got just an uncomfortable feeling with all the moving parts that are still ticking here. And to make such a drastic decision for that specific piece of property without all of the data, if you will, for us to look at.
Okay. Any further comments or questions for staff? Okay, well, thank you. We'll go ahead and ask the applicant if they are here, if you'd like to come up and make a presentation. If you could just state your name and city of residence for the record, that'd be great.
Thank you. My name is Brian Huffaker with the Charter School Fund located in Boise, Idaho. We're certainly glad to be in front of you. We've been working with the staff on our application and trying to address many of the questions and concerns and issues that would relate to any development on the site or any site. This parcel 16 has always been, almost from the conception of Cooley Station, been designated as a school site. I think that whatever happened 10 or 8 years ago when zoning was actually put on the property, the zoning that was placed on the property was such that it did not allow for schools, although in all of the zoning exhibits it had always stated that that would be a school site. In working with the property owners, the current owners, to locate then a school at that site, they were very surprised to find that the zoning did not allow it. So that kind of caught everybody off guard, and we are behind the ball, if you will, in trying to rectify that, and hopefully through this application request your recommendation to approve the zoning for a school as it was always intended. The school that we're representing is called Legacy Traditional Schools. They have about 7 or 8 schools here within the valley between here and Tucson. They are an A-rated school through the Arizona Department of Education. They're a very high-quality school, very well managed and very well operated. They, of course, want to have a school that functions and operates safely and efficiently. Otherwise, parents and students are not going to want to come to their school. So we certainly have the same vested interest that the town has in making sure that we have a site plan, building, classrooms, those kind of things that are attractive and will attract those students to enroll. Specifically, I guess to some of your questions, we have not talked with anyone from the railroad. So I have not seen their email, so I don't know what issues they may have raised as far as concerns. We have talked, through the town planning, engineering, traffic engineer, multiple times, and through our traffic reports to make sure that we are evaluating those things of concern that he would have, and feel that we have done that and have addressed those comments that he might have. I guess where we're here today and asking for the minor amendment and the zone change to allow the school, again, an intended use at this very parcel for many years in the past when previous zoning was evaluated. That's really what I think we're here to ask for, is your recommendation on that zoning. We do have those site plans and elevations and traffic plans that have been submitted, and I realize that is always helpful in those decisions when looking at zoning, and I'm more than happy to talk with you about that if you have questions about those specifics. But we also know that through the process through the town that those engineering type things, safety and traffic and those things will be evaluated. So we're certainly not trying to circumvent the process at all. We tried to go through the DRB process We thought we had a schedule in place to do that. We weren't able to get the detailed plans together to submit to meet the time frame for the December meeting, and we just had to choose to bypass the public hearing portion. But as Maria indicated, we're more than willing to go through the staff level review of all of those same things that will find us compliant with be it the town ordinance or the Cooley Station design guidelines. So we certainly have a lot of direction given to us that we need to meet. So with that, the other thing, so we are aware of the avigation easement, the Area 3, as far as the type of building that we need to construct. We are aware of previous environmental items that have been found on the site. They're not unusual for this valley as far as the insecticides that were used, and we realize that we need to address those things in the development. And we have designed our traffic circulation such that here we have an opportunity when we're building a new project and a new school to really address the adequate traffic circulation and stacking and the loading action. Oftentimes a charter school might try to go into an existing facility that was made for something else, and that stacking often creates a problem on the public roads. But we have designed this so that we have circulation going through the site to provide adequate stacking to be completely contained within our property and not having to rely on the public roads, if you will, for our stacking needs. As far as the railroad, I'm just going to take a guess that maybe if traffic is a concern with the railroad and cars backing up onto Wrecker Road, we have two accesses off of Wrecker to the site. One is a right-in, right-out access that's directly on Wrecker, just north of the railroad tracks. That one, during the drop-off and pickup activities, would be managed as a right-out only. So we will not have any cars that would be stacking on Wrecker Road trying to get into the site and being stalled and crossing those tracks. We would eliminate that conflict there. Then the other access is through the full access there at the future Somerton Boulevard extension that we will be building to the east. We did have to, my last comment, we did have to reduce the size, as Maria indicated, just a number of cost issues with having to reroute the existing Roosevelt Water Conservation District lateral that goes through the middle of the site. And we have to route that in a longer distance than we thought we were able to arrange. And at the request of the landowners, the original site plan bisected a irrigation ditch that went to the north that feeds the continual properties to the north of this for their future irrigation needs. They just really didn't want to mess with that, and they asked us if we could do something to try to avoid that. And so we brought that east property line in to avoid that conflict. So I appreciate your time. I would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Huffaker. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Ayler. I keep wanting to pronounce it another way, the way it reads, but I have to think about it every time. Sorry.
Thank you. I guess in looking at the original one that we received before the one we received today, and I'm trying to understand the reason for the chunk taken away. I mean, it looks like you guys took away stacking and parking and all those great things you were talking about. So what was the purpose of that?
Sure. Let me put on what our new one is. Yeah, that work? So the original site plan, I guess you can't see that. The original site plan came out, it was even, if you look at the bottom northeasterly direction property line, it was even out a little bit further, and it went up just about at a straight angle up towards Somerton. The north irrigation district that we talked about, you don't see it, but about where the wording is for the little circles that have the plan notes on it, that's about where that would be. I guess I could point here, right about here.
Right.
So we needed to avoid that area with this. The other thing that we had tried to do is we're having to deal with 70 feet of this property that is encumbered through 2 easements. One is the El Paso natural gas easement. I don't know who owns it now because they seem to keep being purchased by someone else. There's a 50-foot easement along the railroad tracks in which we are not allowed to use or put anything on, trees or paving or anything. Along that, as we take the lateral that comes across and bisects the property, we have to route that around the property. Now we're adding another 20 feet on top of that 50 feet for that irrigation pipe to be brought back around until it connects up to the system that goes underground. So now we're losing 70 feet of this area, which is really, I know it's a necessary need, but it's a cost that we have to buy ground and we're not able to use it. We had thought that we would be able to work with the Roosevelt Water Control District, Conservation District, to see if there were some options to try to recapture some of that land for our fields and utilize that land that we have to buy. But they were unwilling to do that or for other reasons just didn't feel that was the right thing. So we basically had to come back and now shift our fields out of those easements. So that's why it has to jog out to the east, is because of the constraints here and still maintaining the dimensions of the ball fields. So it is certainly an odd-shaped piece on the east, but in our opinion, a square or rectangle is always the easiest thing to develop, as opposed to coming and creating some kind of a line here. You really develop a triangular long piece here for the adjacent property owner that really becomes inefficient and unusable. By keeping this in a rectangular area, we'll maximize his opportunity to develop that. As far as the traffic circulation, one of the comments from the first review comments was the drive aisle that we used to have to come around here. And we had 2 drop-off locations. We had one parallel with Record, then we had one on the east side of the school. The school likes to have those different areas so that we can kind of reduce the concentration of cars all in one location at one time. Well, there were some concerns with that drive aisle as far as, is it one way, is it two-way, is it a fire lane, those kind of things. Well, as we tried to pull the fields to utilize those easements, that really eliminated any space for those drive aisles. So we were able to redesign our drop-off and pickup areas. We still have the same area parallel with Record that we had before. The other area moved from the east of the school to in front of the school. What we have designed is still an opportunity for cars that come in off of Somerton to stack in this area before they drop off here, and as well to stack as a second lane around here, coming around to drop off in front of the school. We still have about 250 to 300 feet more stacking distance than what would be required for that. The other thing that we have chosen to do based off of this new plan, because of it is shorter in distance than what we had, although it's still adequate and meets the requirements, the school has agreed to stagger the start and end times between the younger grades and the older grades. So they will be staggered by 30-minute time periods. So again, we're dispersing the concentration of vehicles to do 2 different locations, but we're also dispersing the amount of cars that would be there at any one given time.
Okay, I guess a little bit. I mean, the easements and the right-of-way or portions, I guess, I mean, that's a choice between you and the original landowner. I mean, it's kind of not a choice of design. Yes, it's unfortunate that you're buying land that you can't use. But that's kind of part of the deal that we deal with any of this. When you buy part of it that you got to give up for a street, you have to do that too. I'm really, I mean, it really goes back to the other case we dealt with. I'd really like to see more of this, how you're dealing with traffic patterns. I kind of liked when you originally were talking about how you're splitting the drive aisles, but, you know, I guess that's another design choice, that if you don't want to loop your property with a road, I understand, but without really getting to study this traffic pattern and looking at how you're coming on a road, and I mean, there was how we bleed back into the community. I mean, and it's not just dealing with the railroad side, it's how do you deal with the property adjoining you. And we haven't got to see that part. And we're saying we hope it works. And is the staggering, is that tied as a actual stipulation? Or that you're staggering your hours between your younger grades and older grades?
Madam Chairwoman, Commissioner, it certainly is the, I guess what we have included and proposed in the analysis in the traffic analysis report. Whether it's a stipulation, I guess that's one thing that you could place on there. I guess what I'm saying is, if that's what the analysis is based off of, I'm assuming that's what we will be required to comply with.
Well, I don't want to assume.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Any further comments? Okay.
And I understand that, you know, easements, that's just part of real estate, and you certainly have to deal with that. As we, even the plan that you have before you, we thought was reasonable until we met with, for our third time with the Water Conservation District. They really are prohibiting us from doing anything over the site. They want a fence between the playground and their pipe so that at no time would they ever have to enter the campus in order to work on their pipes. I understand that. It's just very difficult to now have 70 feet of property, which you can't even put a ball field of plain grass over an area that will never be utilized by them for access because of the quality of the piping that goes under. But that's what we're trying to deal with and trying to work around those changes in those stipulations.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sippel?
Actually, can I ask Maria a question? Is that all right if I ask her a question first? It will lead into my other.
Sure, that's fine.
Maria, did the school district previously have this site looked at for a school for themselves?
Correct. 2 ordinances ago, before these parcel and the parcel to the east were rezoned to single-family detached, the zoning exhibit showed the Higley School District site there. With the last entitlement application, couple of years ago, the school district, Higley School District, abandoned the idea or the interest they had on this piece, and we keep a letter from them that was submitted with a packet at that time to the Commission and Council that they were not interested on this site or any other in the immediate area. Okay. So that's why the property owners and the main stakeholder, who's Mr. Jeff Cooley, was out of the country for 2 years. But his son was moving along this last entitlement for another builder to the north. So they accepted that since they didn't have any specific plans to rezone everything, this piece, this one to the east, with single-family detached. So
thank you. And that might lead me into the last 5 minutes of all the issues we've heard with this site. I'm sure the school district had done some due diligence and probably found that it wasn't just maybe soil issues, but some of these others that we're hearing now. My question then for the applicant is, have you built schools for Legacy before?
Yes, we have. We have built, in fact, we built all of their schools here.
You have. So you're familiar with Athlos Academy then?
Yes, we are.
And you're familiar with the traffic issues they have there?
Yes, we are.
So in that piece in particular, I mean, there can be stacking of half an hour, 45 minutes of parents waiting to pick their children up at this school, which is bigger. I think Athlos is bigger than this one's proposed to be, correct?
And remember, Athlos is really a curriculum of part of their curriculum-based teaching. But this would have the same facilities as far as a turf field, a gymnasium, those kind of things that incorporate physical activity as part of the learning process.
And I guess I'm not getting caught up on the curriculum piece. It's more so the pickup and drop-off concerns and congestions within that area during those times. Because what's different about Athlos versus here is there's not a major railroad right south of the property. And so I know stacking at Athlos in particular is all south of the facility. I mean, most of it stacks south on, I think it's Gilbert Road there, which if you were to use that same thought process here, where would that stack? That would stack right over the railroad. And so, obviously, I don't know what the stipulations were there about what Commissioner Adler said regarding, can you make that a requirement of staggered pickup and drop-off times? Well, I suppose we could, but then how do you monitor that? And what do you do if they're not? Is my initial concern with that. So it just seems to me, and one of the comments you had also made is, some charter schools go into what is it that you used? Existing facilities, if you will, and they try to make it work.
Right.
I just kind of have that same feeling here on this piece of property, where there's lots of property within that area that would be much farther away from, still within Cooley Station, still within, I'm sure, your target area, that don't back up to the railroad. So those are just some of my thoughts and concerns.
Does anybody else have a question for the applicant? Commissioner Bianchi?
So if I understood correctly, the town traffic engineer has not had a chance to look at this latest plan for circulation.
He has.
Correct, okay. On the other schools, I think last month we had heard that this will probably potentially house, I think it was upwards of 1,100 students. Have you built similar size schools before, and are they on this size lot? Or, because you, like you said, you prefer to develop on a rectangle, but do you have any examples of one, is the acreage similar for the amount of students you're proposing, as well as have this kind of stacking and queuing worked at another location before, or is this kind of a first time you're trying to do something like this?
Sure, thank you. So traffic was one, and then what was your other?
It was traffic, and then with 1,100 kids on a
Okay.
15-acre site, is that typically how it works, or is that a lot for 15 acres? I'm not sure with what you've developed in the past.
Yep. Our last one that we did was, that we opened was in Levine last year, and then Chandler was the year before. Those have typically been on about 10.5-acre sites. Okay.
Is that gross? Gross acre? Because with the revised plan you have before us tonight, it's what, almost 13 gross acres and
Well, but yes,
12
but
net?
gross including is the
The
right of way
street,
you're
right.
dedicating for Somerton. So we're on about 11.5 net acres here, and those were usually about 10.5 net acres. Okay. So it is a little bit larger than what we've had in the past. Most of the previous schools have all been on a single start and end time. In one of their schools, they've chosen to start to split that because of trying to help improve the traffic. We're just finding that you cut 40 to 50% of your traffic, and that's obviously going to help. What we have, and to correct the timing of review, Mr. Gearden has reviewed this and has issued some initial comments to this plan. I'm not going to say how in detail that was or not, but he did give some specific comments to the circulation and stacking and drive aisles and those kinds of things. That circulation that's proposed that he is reviewing, and remember with charter schools we have the opportunity through a traffic management plan, if you want to call it that, a procedure with the parents to designate which drop-off a parent would be assigned to, their time, those types of things. So they're not just coming in and trying to pick the shortest route to get in and out. They have to follow that procedure. All of the access into the school would occur at the Somerton entrance. Again, nothing at Wrecker, no entrances coming in on Wrecker, in which would potentially stack up back across the railroad tracks. Everyone is coming in through Somerton, coming down about 600 feet to the entrance, and then either stacking here and dropping off, or stacking here as they come back around and then exit. Half of those cars would exit out of Wrecker, and since it's right in, right out, you have to go north. And then here, coming out the Somerton Road, you could make the left or the right. The stacking, you know, I don't know the numbers to say we have more than the last school or not. I don't know that number.
I was just curious if this pattern has worked at a school in the past.
Well, we have not split different drop-off locations at other schools. They've done the split time, but this was our first effort to try to split the location, to try to disperse different cars going different ways so that not everyone's using one access to get out of the site. And that's really been the biggest issue, is getting the cars out of the site. And if they can't get out, then it just trickles back and stacks through the site. So this gives us an opportunity to get the kids dropped off and ample area to get out of the site without stacking everybody behind us.
And then my second question was, in your planning or in discussions, is there any plan that you've come up with to kind of mitigate or minimize the impact of potentially students or pedestrians trespassing across the tracks or not crossing in a designated area, you know, as it backs up to the tracks?
As far as the pedestrian walkers, nothing in, as far as physical direction, if you will, the entire campus, you know, from the building around the playgrounds back to the building is completely fenced as security there. So as you're playing in the ball fields, you're not going to kick your ball across the tracks and go run over and get it. Now, obviously, when you get outside of that secured area and you're walking home or whatever, then we can certainly encourage people to be safe, but
Thank you.
that.
Vice Chairman Peterson.
I have a question about the staggered start times. I don't think we've heard this before, and I'm just curious, if you have K through 8 kids, and say I have a kindergartner, a 3rd or 4th grader, and an 8th grader, wouldn't they be staggered at different times, and what would I do as a parent to handle that?
That is a potential that would happen, and probably will happen to a percentage of those families. We have found, and we're doing the same thing in Texas, that parents are okay with if their younger child starts at 8, but their older child starts at 8:30, that they drop them both off at the same time, and that older child either is on the playground playing or goes into the homeroom or whatever they might happen. And then on the back side, while the older kid is still finishing and the younger student is done, they would have that activity to wait. So that the drop-off and pickup would still just happen one time for them.
And I think Commissioner Bianchi just made this pop into my head. Was we had a charter school last month that we talked a lot about drop-off and pickup.
Yep.
They do not allow walkers, and I don't even think they allow bike riders any longer to their school. Will you have walkers and bike riders to your school? Is it all going to be drop-off?
Historically, it's very low for walkers, and certainly immediately, there's not anything to the east, north, or west of here. I guess, you know, to the southwest there could be some, but historically it's very few walkers. I don't know that they've ever prohibited that. I don't think that they have. Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not intentional.
It just came up last month, so it was a good thing to think about, especially
Sure.
with the tracks, and right now with the development, mostly southwest, anybody walking that might be close by is going to have to cross those tracks.
Sure.
I have a question, and it relates, since it's brought up in the staff report, respective of the Higley School District comments and the environmental concerns. Can you give me a little information on
Sure.
what those concerns are and maybe what your environmental site report indicated?
Sure. Their report, and they provided at least the summaries to us, and Maria provided that to us, identified, I think in '08 is when they did their analysis, found that mostly in kind of this, if you bisected the property with the existing lateral, you got kind of a south and a north half. The south half of the property and a little bit of this area here had the constituent called toxaphene, which is an insecticide that's commonly used, and has been used in agriculture here for some time. It's within the top foot layer of the soil. We've run into it on many other sites, and it's been to levels that really, if we go and churn that in with clean soil, if you will, that has satisfied DEQ with diminishing those levels to an acceptable level. On this site, that is a potential, and in fact, a letter from our environmental company was supplied to identify, here's the possible remediation actions you can take with this. One is to not do anything and have some limited use of the property, be it school or residential or whatever that might be. Another is to completely pick up the soil and take it off to an approved landfill. Or the other is to do that aeration mixing process. Whatever that process is, we expect that since the levels identified were above a screening level with DEQ, they get involved in the process now, and we will have to retest that after we've remediated, whether it's removal or aerating that, to show that that's at a clean site or that's at a clean level.
Okay.
So that's what I know about the environmental. I know there was other comments made from the school as far as us wanting to look or be a part of the Higley Unified School District, and that if that's what they heard, that's certainly not what we said or intended to say. We want to be our own educational facility, so we're not trying to blend in and look like their district.
Great, thank you. Any further comments or questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Huffaker. We'll go ahead and open up to the public. Is there anybody here wishing to speak on this matter? I don't have any cards. Doesn't look like anybody's jumping up and ready to speak on it. So with that, we'll give it back to staff. Does staff have any further comments or questions? Maria, do you have any further comments or discussion topics?
No, just to clarify that we're still reviewing the plans, that we don't have a concrete or a specific direction from the traffic engineer. We'll make that available to the applicant, and we'll facilitate meetings so that things get resolved before placing this on a council agenda.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for discussion and possible motion. Who would like to start? Commissioner Ehler.
Thank you. Well, I guess I still have a lot of issues with traffic pattern and not knowing it and not having a full review from the traffic with staff. I don't know if if we could look at it as a continuance, or if the applicant would even consider a continuance. But at this point, I'm kind of driving blind. So I don't know what you guys think, but that's kind of where I sit right now.
Commissioner Sippel?
I would have to agree. If they're looking for some sort of approval today based on what I've got, I don't have one. Now, my concern is, if we continue this to go through the information that's been recently, submitted to staff, will it still go to council in January, I guess is my question. I guess it can't, right?
No, it'd have to come back to the Planning Commission. We wouldn't have probably time for a special meeting in December. And it'd probably have to come back in January to a Planning Commission, and maybe the end of January for council, or February for council, I'm guessing.
It was scheduled already for today's Planning Commission and a council on January the 17th. So there's a still option for
Okay.
holding another Planning Commission meeting prior to that
Before the
council
council.
date.
Okay.
And our commission date is January 2nd.
Second, yeah.
That's,
So, again, if they want to push me for an answer, they're not going to like it right now. So I think it's best to just, continue this, for me, to continue it.
Okay. Commissioner Bianchi, anybody else have any further comments?
I would echo the same sentiments. I think just in our general discussion, there's been a lot more questions and concerns raised that have been answered. So I would lean towards continuance as well until we have the facts in front of us, just like with EduPrise, to move forward.
I agree with everything that's been said.
And I would have to also agree. I know that it's a zoning case and a general plan amendment case, and so typically we don't get to look at site plans. But under this particular instance, when there's questions and comments and concerns raised from outside adjacent property owners, be it the Unified or the railroad or the Higley Unified School District or others, if there's concerns about specific items, then we need to be able to review and discuss that as part of the public process. And unfortunately, that does not allow us to do it in this particular context, especially given the fact that we don't have a plan that's been truly vetted by and through the various engineering departments and the like. So I would feel much more comfortable bringing this back to the commission in January, especially if it doesn't risk the applicant continuing their council date as well. So that would be my feeling. With that, is there a motion, Commissioner Ayler?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Vice Chairman Peterson.
Commissioner Smiley, Counselor Smiley, based on the fact that it's a GP and zoning separate, do we have to do two separate motions to continue, or can we do one to continue for both?
As long as we name both.
Commissioner Peterson, you can do one, but make sure that you
Spell it
name
out.
both cases.
Okay. All right, do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
From what I'm hearing from the commission this evening, I would like to move to continue GP 12-07, the request for a minor general plan amendment, and Z 12-20, a request to amend ordinances 1900, 2179, 2195, and 2304 until our January meeting at this time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner or Vice Chairman Peterson, a second by Commissioner Ayler. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this case will be continued to the January 2nd meeting. All right, so we'll go back to the front of our agenda, and we'll announce case Z 12-15, which is amend ordinance numbers 2889 or 2289 and 2386 to amend conditions of the development within the Adora Trails PAD for approximately 241.47 acres of real property located east of the southeast corner of Val Vista and Riggs Road in the single-family 6 zoning district. The request is to amend conditions of the development in the Adora Trails Planned Area Development Zoning District to increase the maximum lot coverage from 45% to 50% for single-story and from 40% to 45% for two-story homes. And with that, we'll invite Mr. Al Ward and open the public hearing.
Thank you, Chairman Wittmann and members of the Planning Commission. This is a request to amend the SF6 parcels at Adora Trails. Adora Trails is a master plan community located east of the southeast corner of Val Vista Drive and Riggs Road. This is the aerial. It's overall 587 acres, has 4 specific zoning districts. And what we're looking at today is a modification to a development standard in one of the districts, the SF6 district, and that standard has to do with the lot coverage area. Again, the overall parcels for Adora Trails, 1,871 lots, 16 different phases. The zoning in here is SFD, SF6, SF7, and SF8. What we're dealing with today is specifically the SF6 parcels. As I mentioned, it's a request to amend the development standard for lot coverage to increase it to provide for the homes on these particular properties. This is the overall open space plan. There's a significant amount of open space in Adora Trails. Over 22% of the overall site is provided as open space. And that's one of the amenities of this master plan community. Master development plan shown here, different phases of development. So what we're looking for now is to amend the SF6 district. There's 241 acres in total with 963 lots. And the request would be to increase the lot coverage allowable from 45 to 50% for single-family homes, make that single-story homes, and from 40 to 45% for two-story homes. Staff is actually recommending a lower increase in that. Instead of 5% for single and two-story homes, just a 3% increase. For example, that increase that is being recommended or is being requested by the applicant would increase the lot coverage area from 2,280 square feet to 2,565 square feet for a two-story home, and from 2,500 to 2,800 square feet for a one-story home. So you can see that it increases at approximately 280 square feet. I just wanted to show some typical plot plans here, the way it would work out. Essentially, when the development was established, there was a ability or a consideration by the applicant to consider the amended development standards for SFD, which are actually increased from 3,000 square feet to 5,500 square feet, and SF6, which has a minimum parcel size of 6,000 for the lots that are being considered for the amendment. So with that, the applicant has provided a product which has been approved by the Design Review Board, which is interchangeable, essentially interchangeable between the SFD and the SF6. When the original zoning allocation was provided, SFD was under discussion, and the applicant, staff and the applicant worked out a solution to provide less of the areas as SFD and more of it for SF6. And that's partly because of the location of Santan character area and the adjoining properties, which are as much as 1 acre in size. So technically, you'd have a 3,000 square foot lot, technically, next to a 1 acre lot. So the SF6 was something that was selected at that time. So with that, I just would like to indicate that staff does support the application. However, we feel that there should be a lower level of increase rather than the 5% for the one-story and two-story, going to 50 and 45% lot coverage respectively. Staff is only recommending 48 and 43. With that, I'd be pleased to answer your questions, and the applicant is here as well with his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Are there any comments or questions for staff? Oh, Commissioner Ayler?
Yeah, I just had a quick one. Going back to SF6 and FFD is kind of the switch. So size-wise, they're the same requirement?
Commissioner Ayler, yes, that's correct. Essentially, they are the same. Amended development standards with the master plan for Adora Trails provided the lot sizes of basically 5,500 and 6,000 square feet for the lots that are being affected. Now, there was also an amendment to the SF6 that provided for some of them to be reduced all the way down to 5,750 square feet. But however, I understand that the lots that we're dealing with are not the smaller SF6s, which are under 6,000, but the ones that are at least 6,000. So
none of the ones that we're talking about are below 6,000?
My understanding is that's correct. The applicant is here to help to clarify that.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for you. I think we had talked about this before, and the applicant, I'm sure, will shed some light on it. But I think as advertised, this request is supposed or thought to apply to all of the SF6 in Adora Trails. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman Wittmann, that is correct. The application is for all SF6 parcels, and that includes 963, give or take, parcels, which are SF6. I know that the applicant has consideration to further address that, but I would like to let him do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Ward. If there's no further questions from staff, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead and invite the applicant up, Mr. Greg Davis, if you could give or just confirm your name and the city you reside in, that'd be great.
I confirm, I am Greg Davis. I live in Chandler. All right. Well, good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the rest of the commission. As I said, Greg Davis with High Plain Consulting here on behalf of Taylor Morrison Homes. And I know I've had the opportunity to speak to many of you over the past 2 weeks about this, and first of all, thank you for that opportunity to take it out of your busy day. It really helps me understand what we need to look at as an applicant to better refine the plan to come before you here tonight. So thank you for that opportunity. And I do want to go over a bit of the history for those that I didn't have the opportunity to meet with, just because it's one of the main reasons that we're here today and I'm up here before you. This is the plan that I dug out of an archive from 2005. This is the first Adora Trails master plan when it was under the Vanderbilt Holdings Wolfswinkel group at that time. And this is the concept, which basically had, does this work? Okay, good. A bunch of higher density or more urban densities in the middle of the project, which constituted multifamily low, single family attached, and some single family detached, with larger lots along the perimeter of the project, kind of in keeping with the transitional intensities that we like to see in the Santan character area. This project was actually started construction in phase 1, which I'll show you on the next slide, but with the school as well. Unfortunately, that's when the wheels kind of fell off the economy and the project was put on the shelf. When the project came back to life, which is the Adora Trails that you know, there really wasn't a market for this type of density in this area. And so when Taylor Morrison acquired the property, there's showing the first phase. They acquired it with basically only the area I've identified here platted and partially constructed. The school was there. The school was open. It was in the middle of a field. It looked very odd. Usually you don't see the schools until the last thing built, but this was the first thing built. And parcels D and F, as illustrated on this exhibit, were basically two lot sizes. There were 55-foot by 110-foot on parcel F, zoned SFD, and then the 2D parcels were 65-foot wide lot on 115-foot depth and zoned SF7. So as we started doing the land plan for the entire project, which this represents, we basically established those two base zoning districts or lot sizes, the 55-foot and the 65-foot, and then complemented them with two other lot sizes, a 65 or a 75-foot wide lot, which is the largest lot, and then a smaller lot. So the whole intent of the project from a product standpoint was to have 4 products, 4 lot sizes, 4 zoning districts moving forward. That's, for this size of parcel, that's what we felt was appropriate. And that's how we ended up going through the zoning process. Now, as Al indicated, we originally had SFD for the parcels that were 55-foot wide, because that's what parcel F was. That was what our original design was. That applied to parcels 3, parcels 6, and parcels 12, and I'll touch on those a little bit later. But basically, we just had 4 different zoning districts to match the 4 different lot widths, to match the 4 different products. At the time, there was a lot of thought and controversy, as there probably is today, about what is appropriate in the Santan character area concerning density. The original plan had a lot of density, but it wasn't on the perimeter of the project. Putting SFD in parcel 12, for instance, right across from Greenfield Acres, was seen then and maybe today as being politically insensitive or challenging to approve. It also applied to some of the larger lots along our east boundary. So at the request of staff, we've modified the request to basically have 2 different lot sizes within the SF6 zoning district. Now, the product that was planned for the 55-foot wide lots met all the SF6 setback requirements. One thing it didn't meet was the lot coverage, and that was a problem that we ran into, but we didn't realize it until we got into phase 2 of the project. That's the product line. So this is a generalized phasing map of Adora Trails, and you can see phase 1, which was the initial phase that was already constructed. As the sales that started in 2010 obviously were very slow. They started to pick up in 11, and this year really hit their stride, and they're having very good sales. That obviously opened the door to Phase 2 construction. And as we were transferring our plans into Phase 2, getting the DR approvals, we ran into the problem of this right here. This is just out of the town code, a comparison between the SFD and SF6. And although we increased the minimum lot size in the SFD and to meet, and our setbacks met all the SF6 requirements, we didn't meet the lot coverage. And as you can see here, there's a substantial difference in the lot coverage allowed between the SFD and SF6, about 15%. So all our plans that we designed to fit on the 55 by 110-foot wide lots didn't fit on the 55 by 115. Even though the lots are bigger, it has the same lot width, we had a problem with the lot fit. And there obviously were concerns of that coming from Taylor Morrison. One is it eliminated the largest 3 plans we had. One single story, the largest single story, and the 2 larger 2-story plans. That limits the diversity of what we can offer. Now, instead of having a greater range, we have a smaller range of product and a lot more smaller homes than what we originally intended and designed and got approved for those 55-foot wide lots. And obviously, internally, it affected their performance, sales, marketing, and it became a problem saying we need to do something about this. And as I met with them and we talked about it, they didn't quite understand the zoning aspect of it, because what they saw was parcel F was 55 by 110-foot wide lots. Here we have lots that are 55 by 115, the same width, but they're actually bigger, but you can't build the same homes on them, even though that was what the original intent was. It has the same setbacks. All the setbacks could be met under the SF6, and it was the original intent of what the product was proposed. So they didn't understand why we were in the situation, how it happened, and why I'm up here before you today. So I apologize about going back there, but that's really the genesis of how we came to be in front of you asking this request. So the request itself is something that we also talked about with staff and my client, because we didn't know what was the right solution to this problem. It's a problem that we all were a part of, but we didn't recognize it, and it certainly wasn't the intent of what happened. We're not here before you because we were bringing a product from Goodyear into this project that just doesn't fit and saying, hey, you know, can we just build this here? These products were approved from the beginning to always be built throughout the subdivision. So we looked at different solutions, and one of them was, well, let's go back to that SFD concept. Let's rezone those parcels that were originally planned for SFD, zone them SFD. It solves the problem, and it's consistent with our original intent. Now, it does bring up problems. One, for us internally is, well, we've not advertised for that. We had our neighborhood meeting. We didn't talk about that as a potential option. So we'd have to step pretty far back in the process to do that, although we're willing to do so if that's a viable solution. But we still have that question of, do we want, or does the town want, to place SFD zoning along the perimeter of a project in the Santan character area? Even though the lot sizes would change, the number of lots, density, nothing would change except for that designation. Does that create an issue? We don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if we want to ask that question of the council or not. So we looked at other options. The second option was to replat. We looked at the project itself, and this project's intent was to have a capped number of lots, and you have choice. You can either have a lot of larger lots like the original plan, or you can have smaller lots and a lot of community open space. We saw this area in Gilbert as not having a lot of smaller lot entry-level opportunities. As a Santan character area, it's supposed to be larger lots. So the concept was to reduce the size of the lots, not necessarily add more lots, just make them more smaller for people that don't want the larger lots, don't want to have that yard space to maintain, and put it in the community area where everyone shares it. And so by replatting, we can solve that problem by cutting out, 5% of open space through the project, adding it into the lots to accomplish that goal of meeting the lot area for the lot coverage. We don't think it meets the intent of the original approval. Plus, we also have a lot of questions about logistically, can that be done? We have people that are living in this community. How are they going to see the loss of open space, community open space to them? The CC&Rs allow it. There's just a lot of issues associated with that solution, so we didn't see that as being very viable. So we came to the proposal that we have today, and that is to increase the lot coverage. And compared to the other ones, it is by far the simplest solution. It solves the problem. It is consistent with the original intent by allowing the same product that was built for the 55-foot wide lots to continue to be built on the 55-foot wide lots. And it doesn't affect any of the platting or any of the existing tracks of the subdivision. So it's a relabeling basically in the narrative, in the ordinance, but it doesn't have any physical impact on what's built on the project. Now, we talked about at great length what concerns there were about that, and really the biggest one that we ran into is, does this create a precedent? Because even though we have a great master plan, we're coming back to you and we're asking for a deviation. We're asking you to increase the lot coverage. And the question has to be asked, well, that's fine, justify it, but what does this do for future projects? If someone across town wants to come in with the same thing, we have to be able to say that, no, this project deserved it because of these reasons, and you do or do not. So we looked at that, and we really don't think there is a precedent concern for the following main reasons. One is that this amendment isn't allowing us to do something that wasn't originally planned. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're not trying to bring a new product here. We're not trying to design bigger homes than what was originally thought for and planned for this property. That itself makes it unique to what we're doing here. Secondly, the project itself is fairly unique. Al covered some of the unique points of the overall plan, the amount of open space at 26%, the miles of trails, the community clubhouse, pool, lake, etc. All those things are very hard to find in a subdivision that's only 500 some acres. Now, that's not a small subdivision, but if you look at other subdivisions with clubhouses, master plans, Seville, Power Ranch, they're well over 1,000 acres. So this is fairly unique in a project of this size. And lastly, we didn't want to come empty-handed, because even though we felt there was a lot of reasons to support this, we understand the position the town is in. So Taylor Morrison wanted to offer something that would not only benefit them and their immediate community, but be something larger, that have some larger benefit to the town. And so the original ordinance for Adora Trails required a 2,000 square foot clubhouse. It was tied to parcel 5, I believe, or phase 5 in the project. Well, Taylor Morrison wanted to generate sales, so they went ahead and built their clubhouse as part of phase 1, but they also built a 4,000 square foot clubhouse. Let me go to that. And this is a blow up of that clubhouse amenity area. So they already satisfied the ordinance requirement, and they did it a lot earlier than they were required to with a bigger clubhouse. But they always had intended to expand that clubhouse depending on how sales went towards the end of the project. Well, they understand the importance of this request, and so they're asking, or they're volunteering to commit the expansion of that clubhouse from where it is now at 4,000 square feet to approximately 11,000 square feet. So it's more than doubling the size of the existing clubhouse, and it would be a commitment to be tied to this P80 amendment. So we're trying to demonstrate that the importance first to the client of what they're trying to do here, the importance of this community, but also that they're offering something that we think eliminates the precedent concern that you may or may not have. And this is just some elevations that were part of the first phase of construction for those that aren't familiar with it. Now, Al spoke to the fact that we did hear some concern about the original request for all SF6, and to be honest, we don't need it for all SF6. This only applies to those lots that were originally intended to be SFD, or the 55-foot wide lot parcels, which are currently parcels 3, 6, and 12. We do have plans to increase the size of one of the other parcels that are right now a 50-foot wide lot to a 55, but we're just not sure what parcel that is. So I don't know how comfortable the commission is to stipulating if they support the request to a number of parcels or 55-foot wide parcels, or how that works out. But I just want to explain to you that the intent is not all 9 SF6 parcels to have this deviation allowed for. It would just be the 3 today and potentially 1 more. And then we also looked at the plan and the plan lineup, and I'll go back to that. I skipped it earlier, just in case anyone had any questions about it. Those are the 4 series of plans that are approved to be built in Adora Trails and plan to be transferred throughout the project. The series that we're concerned with is the Encore series, which is the 45-foot wide plan series. Now, we looked at those plans, and of the single stories, The largest one is the only one we have an issue with, and it's only about 2.5 to 3%. So staff's suggestion of a 3% increase for single story is something that we can agree to as well, which would take it down from the 5 we requested. However, the 2-story, we have 2 plans that are impacted by it, and unfortunately, they're both in the 4 to 5% range. So we would still request the 5% increase in lot coverage for the 2-story plans. And finally, I just wanted to throw up some points about how we think that this is a benefit to the town and not a detriment. And I'll run through these real quickly, but the most important one to us is that it allows us to build the project the way we originally intended it. We made a mistake. We recognize that. We admit that. We're trying to correct that. We think that allowing the lot coverage to increase is a benefit to the town because it allows more diverse plans to be built. If we want to restrict our series of plans by 3 plans, that's fine. I mean, obviously sales will still happen, but now we've taken away the average lot size. Everything's going to get smaller. And that, of course, impacts the town's budget monetarily from a permit fee standpoint. By reducing the number of larger homes we can sell, the permit fees go down. Obviously, the town collects less revenue in that way. And the expanded clubhouse, we think, is a benefit not only for our residents and the ones that want to move here. We think, first of all, it's going to attract more people to Gilbert, which we think is a benefit because of that. But it also provides amenities that the residents would be looking for the town to provide elsewhere. So we think it does provide a reduction in the burden to the town to provide those amenities. And all those things may be somewhat limited or small when you measure them across the town-wide. But what we're also asking for here, we feel, is small. This is not a significant request in the fact that what will result will have no visual difference from what was approved, what originally intended or would be approved today. We're not asking for setback deviations so we can make the homes wider. We're not asking for more lots. We're not asking for reduced open spaces. What we're only allowing for is to build those 3 plans that we were originally intended to build on these size lots. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Are there any comments or questions for the applicant? Commissioner Ehler?
Thank you. You talked about the increased open space and for what's required, and you were talking about I think it was option 2, or maybe it was 1. I don't know. If you were to carve out those spaces, and how much open space would you have if you were to do that?
Chairman, Commissioner Ehler, we haven't run the specific numbers, but right now we're at 26%. I can't see it taking more than 5% to accommodate that, so we'd still be above the minimum.
Okay. And then I guess going to the 1 and 2 story, the 3 and 5%. So how many 2-story plans would be affected if you went to 5%?
Madam Chair.
Or if I held it through, like if we didn't, if it was at only 3%.
If it was 3%, basically what that changes is the largest 2-story plan would only be built on, say, 10% of the lots. The second largest would be built on about 50%. So the 3% certainly helps in that second to largest plan, but it doesn't help a lot with the largest 2-story plan, which happens, of course, to be one of the best sellers. That's usually the case. Okay. So that's why we're asking for the full 5%. If we could get up to at least half the lots, then we could certainly live with the 3% for that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sippel?
Let's stay on this slide here for my question. Going to the Summit series, you would build this series in the area?
Yes, sir.
Yep. So the largest home is the 4,600 square feet almost, 2-story. What zoning do you want to put that in?
Commissioner Sippel, that's already approved for SF 8 zoning.
Yeah, just there.
It's
yeah.
Yes.
I'm just, with some of them, my concern is the size of the lot and the size of the home collectively. I mean, taking a large chunk of it. So if we do add the percentage up to what they're asking for, especially in the 2 stories, the majority of that house, well, the house is going to take up the majority of the lot, even with that 2% difference.
All right, thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? I guess I have a couple. I know that we thankfully got a chance to speak a little bit yesterday, so you answered some of my questions. I'll recap some of those here just for the audience. But one of my questions, which I didn't ask yesterday, is I gather from your previous comments that a plat has already been approved for these parcels. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, a preliminary plat's approved for the entire project. Final plats have been approved for Phase 2, which constitute parcels in the south, these 4 parcels here. And we're in the process of final platting Phase 3 right now.
Okay. I know that you had identified specific plans that wouldn't fit within the context and the confines of the maximum lot coverage. And I guess I'm struggling with permitting by right an increase to the maximum lot coverage when it really isn't needed except for 3 of the plans. And so in order to make me feel a little bit more comfortable that if for some reason Taylor Morrison were to walk or somebody else were to come in and buy the property or what have you, that there isn't this open right to maximum lot coverage being increased for all product types throughout all of the SF6 parcels. I guess something that we kind of talked about that would make me personally, I don't know what the other commissioners feel, more comfortable is restricting that approval to only the floor plans or the, not the floor plans, but the plans for maybe the single-story model that you need the maximum lot coverage increased for, and the 2 two-story. That way it kind of prohibits anything else, any fallout from anybody else or anybody else increasing the home by adding a mother-in-law quarters or whatever. I think I would feel personally more comfortable that it's very, very limited rather than just opening up Pandora's box and allowing it by right. Is that something that you guys might feel, or Taylor Morrison might feel comfortable with?
Madam Chair, yes, that's something that we discussed, and that meets the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. All right, any further questions for the applicant? Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis, then.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Is there anybody here wishing to speak on this item? I don't have any cards, and I don't see anybody interested in speaking. So with that, we'll ask staff to come back up. I think Commissioner Ehler has a question for you.
Yes, I do. I guess just so I understand, in talk with the applicant and presentation that, so there's approval for 5 or 6 or whatever the count is of floor plans. So, and it kind of goes to what we're talking about a few minutes ago, is those floor plans are approved as standard plans and they're tied to this, and can they come in with another plan? I mean, how does that work when it comes to the standard plan and these lots and SFD to SF6?
Chairman Wittmann and Commissioner Ehler, the plans have been approved already by the Design Review Board with these square footages. I guess your question is that if other plans come in, for example, under the Encore series there at 3,400 square feet, one of the plans, suppose they added another couple in that same range. Are you asking, can they be substituted by other plans, or?
Yeah, that's, I guess, getting to where's the limitations to this, because if we get there and then like, well, that product just went off the cliff, doesn't sell very well, and now this one's great. So let's, where's the limitations?
Well, one of the things that came to me would, for example, that Encore series with a larger, maybe rather than referring specifically to the Encore series with a 34 or 3,500 square foot lot, it could just be referred to as the area, the allowable area, square footage for that particular standard plan within that zoning district. Again, we're talking about limiting the total number of lots now from 968 to more like 240, give or take, lots. So that would be one limitation that I believe the applicant has opened the door to. In other words, we have two sizes of SF6. One is the one that was reduced to 5,700. We're not dealing with those whatsoever. We're only dealing with the ones that are over 6,000 square feet, 6,000 square feet or greater. So that limits it down to 250, give or take. And now we're talking about the possibility of limiting, let me see if I can say this again. First of all, we discussed specific model standard plans. For example, the suppose that's standard plan 3,456 or 64. So we would say on those 240 lots, models, specifically, we could go to an increased lot coverage for those models, 34, 36, and 35, 48. Is that what we're saying, for one thing?
Well, I don't know what we're saying collectively, but what I was saying was that it would make me personally feel more comfortable if we were to stipulate that only those specific plans, not even a range, but those specific plans for the single story, the 2,600 or 2,643 square foot or whatever it is, actually I think it's a 2121, can have a maximum lot coverage of X percentage, whatever it needs, not, I think he said it only needed 3%. And then for the two-story model plans, that those specific plans could have an increase in lot coverage to X percentage, whatever it needs, but nothing more. But that's me. I don't know how anybody else on the commission feels. That made me feel more comfortable that it was the limitation, it was reduced to only really apply to three of the models. And the rest of the community had to maintain the maximum lot coverage as specified by the code. For me, again.
Well, I mean, you said you'd be comfortable with that, and I think the applicant agreed that they would concur, so yeah, I'd support that.
Any further questions for staff? I do have one, I guess, additional question, and I meant to ask it when Mr. Davis was up here, and I had it on my notes, and I just got too giddy about the other threes. But with respect to the clubhouse, I know that you mentioned that the developer is willing to increase the clubhouse as part of the give and take of this application. I didn't notice that there was any sort of stipulation that required the development of that to occur within a certain time period. What's the intent? Because if we don't stipulate to it, it doesn't necessarily have to happen.
Madam Chair, yes, that's something that it was in the original narrative that we're willing to commit to it. As far as when, I guess that's a question of what the town's comfortable with. We've actually already submitted our preliminary application for it. So Taylor Morrison's ready to build it now. So if it's part of the PAD as far as the construction of it to occur prior to the end of phase 2 or 3 or whatever it may be, I think that's
What is
fine.
phase 2 or 3 or whatever it may be?
Right now, phase 2 is what we've started construction on, or if we tie it to a parcel development, that's fine with us. We just need to know what parcel you guys are comfortable with. What is the mechanism going to be? Is it the C of O for the clubhouse, or is it the permit to pull a permit by a certain date? Whatever you're comfortable with that, then I can tell you when that's going to occur, or give you an outside date that we will commit to agreeing with that.
Okay.
It's just whatever you guys are comfortable with tying it to exactly.
I don't know about the other commissioners, but I would just feel comfortable that a permit was pulled, just so that we know that construction is commencing by a certain period of time. But I don't, again, I'm not speaking for any of the other commissioners, and then, so maybe you can come up with some ideas quickly and let us know before we close the public hearing.
I'd actually be more in favor of C of O, because you can pull a permit and just sit on it.
That's true, I guess.
So if we're committing to it, then it's a C of O, because, I mean, we hope it goes and you can pull a permit.
Then we need to build in some additional time to allow that to develop
Yeah,
to occur
yeah, I
from the
would give
time
more
of.
time for that.
Right.
And also, just Chairman Wittmann, because of, if the commission does decide to tie it to the 3 plans, I just, the numbers that were up there aren't the plan names. We have plan names that are different from the square footages. That's how they're tracked. It'd be a lot easier to tie it to the plan name versus a square footage. And I have
Okay.
those if you'd like.
Yeah, if you could just maybe give those to staff or us so that if we end up stipulating to it, we can just specify to the plan name that's approved by the DR already.
I can give them to you.
Okay,
You
let's
bet.
go.
4034, 4044, and 4073.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, and I'll try to find a date for a C of O that we can live with and while you're having your discussion. if that's
Okay,
all right.
great, thank you. And Mr. Ward, did you have anything further to add? Or commissioners have any questions for Mr. Ward? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing then and bring it back to the dais. Comments, questions, thoughts? Commissioner Bianchi?
I guess just in regards to general comments, I think given that the density and the number of units is remaining the same, I like the idea of the slightly smaller lots permitted rather being replaced for straight SFD on the chance that the SF6 remains if these parcels don't develop as planned, as you had alluded to. We are seeing more of these circumstances on small lot developments, and as we've kind of talked about, my willingness to grant these requests is probably going to quickly wear thin. So, but however, I do agree with the staff's proposed lot coverage compromise because I think that allows the applicant some flexibility in the specific case, and it impacts a fewer amount of lots. So I would be in favor of the proposal.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ayler?
I'd also be in favor going this way, just for the same reasons of working through this and not just opening up the whole thing to, okay, all of S6 is this way, and really narrowing it, and that'd be the only way I'd be in favor of it, is really tying this thing down as tight as we can, but still give flexibility to the applicant because they're not 100% sure of where each one's going to go. So I'd also look at this as there's definitely a lot that the applicant's given, a lot more open space, and I was looking for that number, but being at 26% over, and which is a lot larger than what's required, really helps out that they're not just trying to cram all this in, which is my worry of what might come to us into the future. So having that, giving it larger amenities for the clubhouse, I think really sets a standard of that they're really trying to make this work. And it was SFD prior to this. So it's not that we're putting new buildings and new homes and trying to squeeze in larger ones. It was already that way and came back the other way. So that's where I'm at.
Vice Chairman Peterson?
I commend Taylor Morrison for coming in and taking over this property. I was here when it came in as Mountainwood years and years and years ago, and it just stopped, and they came in and took it over with just a school sitting there, and I think they've gone above and beyond with the 26% open space, and I'm happy with what the majority of the commission is comfortable with. Sometimes I think we overthink things and we might make it a little bit more difficult for the builder, but since they seem to be very agreeable, then I'm happy to go along with the rest of everybody with the comments that you made, Chairman, and the limiting to the sizes. If they had come in for SFD and it was approved, they would have 60% lot coverage for all of those lots, and they've decided not to do that. You know, that would take a lot more time to come back with a different zoning change, and this seems to be the easiest solution for everybody. And I also commend them for sticking to the number of lots that's been on that property all along, 1,871, I think it is, because obviously with different home builders, it could have changed drastically over the years and come back to us quite different. And I think they've done a great job under the circumstances. I think it's an interesting property, the way that it's tucked in there, and they've done a really great job. So, like I said, I'm comfortable with everything since the applicant seems to be.
All right. No further comments? I think I've given you my feel of kind of how I feel and how I'd get a little comfortable or more comfortable with this particular request. I don't know if the applicant has been able to ascertain when they would feel comfortable establishing some sort of timeline with the C of O for the clubhouse.
Thank you for that time, Madam Chair. Yes, and we've tried to find a way to make it easier to enforce as well for everybody. And where we're at right now is phase 2, which this map is good to show up there. We're under construction, phase 2. Parcel 5, if you recall, we rezoned that a few months ago because we didn't have a 65-foot wide product in phase 2. So technically parcel 5 is part of phase 3, but it's actually going to undergo construction with phase 2. So what we would offer is that we would tie it that the clubhouse had to be in receipt of its C of O before any more C of Os were issued beyond parcel 5 in phase 2. So that's everything that we're working on under construction now. That'll probably take about 2 years to go through. So we wouldn't be able to pull any permits, or not permits, but, well, I guess, yeah, permits for parcel 6, 7, 8, the rest of the project until it's done. So it would basically be tied to phase 2, which is the intent.
So is parcel 5 SF6 or SF8? I can't tell from the
It is
exact.
SF7. It was SF8. We rezoned it to SF7 to accommodate a different product.
And I can't.
And that's why it's this map shows it as SF8 still.
Okay.
But what we're saying is that this originally was in phase 3. We're moving it to phase 2 because of that issue. So what we're asking, if you include this in phase 2, what we're saying is that C of O will be issued prior to us moving on from phase 2.
So prior to the commencement of phase 3?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, well, any further comments? Anybody want to make a motion? I guess I will. Let me. Let's pull up the stipulations here.
Do you want me to make the motion then?
Sure.
'Cause I had to get to it too.
Yeah,
so.
that'd be great.
Let's see here. For the reasons set forth in the staff report, I would move to recommend approval to Town Council for Z12-15 as requested, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And were we amending any? Okay.
Well, I was going to.
Oh, and then I took it over. Why don't I do this? I will pull my motion back and allow you to lead us there.
All right, okay, so for the reasons set forth in the staff report, move to recommend approval to the Town Council for Z12-15 as requested, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, in addition to permitting only the lots, well, how do we want to say this? For plans 4034, 4044, and 4073 to increase the maximum lot coverage to, well, I guess I need to know what the difference is between the single story versus the two-story. Which one is the single story and which one's the two-story? I assume it's the 4034 is a single?
Madam Chair, it's 4034, or 4073 is a single story. The 3 at the end designates a single story, the 4 a two-story.
And you needed the 3% for the single story and 5% for the two-story?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So what I was proposing is that we stipulate that the increase in lot size only be approved for Plan 4073 to a maximum of 48% lot coverage. Is that correct? And then for Plans 4034 and 4044, a maximum of 45% lot coverage. And then also an additional stipulation that requires that the C of O for the addition to the clubhouse as presented tonight be complete prior to any permits being pulled or construction being pulled for phase 3.
Madam Chair, could we tie it to a C of O for phase 3? just because we
Pulling
we may be grading and doing some earthwork in there, but we won't be able to close any more homes beyond phase 2.
I'm okay with that if everybody else is.
Thank you.
Okay. So with, that's my recommendation with the amended stipulations. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Peterson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you. All right. Okay.
Tony asked that we hear the next three together if we can. If we can.
We have the next agenda items. We have actually 3 of them on our agenda that are very similar in request, different locations. Ms. Smiley, would it be possible for us to hear all 3 cases at the same time, as long as we, kind of like a general plan and zoning case, as long as we note them all and make a motion on them individually?
Yes, I believe so. The issue, as I understand it, for the cases is the same. The request is very similar. You will need to have 3 separate motions, of course, on the separate cases. And if, as discussion progresses, there are varying issues for one case or another, then I would suggest that you separate out that case.
Okay, perfect. So with that, we'll hear agenda items number on our agenda 12, 13, and 14 at the same time, which is case Z12-16. It's a request to amend the ordinance number 2338 and rezone approximately 34 acres of real property located west of the southwest corner of Higley and Pecos Roads from approximately 34 acres of SF7 with a PAD to single-family 7 with a PAD overlay. And the purpose is to, number 1, change the side yard setbacks from 5 foot and 10 foot required to 6 foot and 9 foot required. And the second request is to allow an additional 10% increase in lot coverage over the maximum allowed only for open air accessory structures, open air attached and detached patios and porches. The case number 13 is Z12-17. It's an amendment ordinance number 2344 and rezone approximately 47.29 acres of real property generally located at the southeast corner of Lindsay and Williamsfield Roads to amend conditions of development for 47.29 acres. This is also an SFD or SF7 PAD. And it's also rezoning to an SF7 PAD with variations including changing the side yard setbacks from 5 foot and 10 foot to 6 foot and 9 foot, and also to allow an additional 10% lot coverage over the maximum allowed for open air accessory structures, open air attached and detached patios and porches. And the third is essentially the same, but it's case Z12-18, and it's located at the southeast corner, or located southeast of the southeast corner of Higley and Queen Creek Roads. And this one is from approximately 33.18 acres of single-family 6 and approximately 36.91 acres of SF7 PAD with essentially the same request and keeping the zoning the same except for modifying the standards as read before. So with that, I know there's 2 separate planners on these cases, Mr. Nathan Williams and Ms. Amy Thames. I'm thinking Mr. Nathan Williams got designated as the heavy hitter tonight. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and hear your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I won't get into all those details. You did a great job of reading through them. But basically, this is all 3 of these applications are from Meritage Homes. That's why they're all so similar. They just apply to different subdivisions: Higley Manor, the SF7 portion of Higley Manor, SF7 portion of Valvendo, and Bridges North, the SF6 and SF7 portions. Here's an exhibit of Higley Manor, the 34 acres of SF7 there. And then there's Valvendo, and as well as the Bridges North, SF6 and 7. Basically, what we're discussing, and you heard about this at the last study session of Planning Commission, and it's changed a little since then based on your comments. Basically, what the applicant would like to do is change the side yard setbacks from 5 and 10 with a minimum of 10 feet between homes to 6 and 9, and with a minimum of 12 feet between homes. But I mean, essentially, we're talking about a similar combination of 15 feet, 6 and 9, and 5 and 10 combines to be the 15 feet. What the intent of this is for Meritage is to eliminate the need for fire rating the eaves of for the homes that are 5 feet. So when it's 5 feet, they have to fire rate the eaves, and the intent is to avoid that and just still have those setbacks between homes. So it'll essentially be the same, just distance between homes on adjacent lots. It's just a different number at 6 and 9. So that one's a little more simplified than the second request, which is an addition of 10% lot coverage. Last time you saw this, the addition of 10% on top of what is permitted by code. So in SF7, what's permitted by code is 45% for 1-story and 40% for 2-story homes. That's not changing. What would change is, in addition to that percentage, it's another 10% for, as you see here, open air accessory structures, porches, and patios. We'll get into a definition of what we created, a definition of that a little bit, but it excludes, based on the last month's study session, excludes garages, sheds, casitas, and secondary dwelling units. So it only applies to open air accessory structures, porches, and patios. And we have here points to remember: the lot size and building envelope is self-limiting. Height of the accessory building is self-limiting. So we have a few slides that kind of shows that. And again, the minimum requirements for a back patio are 80 square feet, and the front porch is has certain requirements like 6 feet depth and so forth. So anything in excess of that could be over 10 or be included in the 10%. These are the definitions that are in your staff report. I won't read through them. There's the definition of accessory structure, unless you would like me to, but there's the definition of accessory structure, which is in the LDC today. And then there's the proposed definitions for open air accessory structure, open air attached patio, and open air porch, which porch would be the front of the house, patio would be the rear of the house, and accessory structure could be things like ramadas or so on and so forth. Now, the question that we had when we were working on these definitions is the point of one side may be enclosed, and we didn't know how to define that exactly. If you want to take a shot at whether one side is enough to still remain open, or two sides qualifies as open air, we're open to that suggestion. Here's the exhibits that I just talked about. The one on the left it demonstrates a typical ramada of 10 feet, say, in height, which will require a 9-foot setback on the sides and rear. As you can see here, it's if this were to be constructed, which is a pretty large portion of the backyard to be taken up, you'd still have 47.6% on that home. So, or on the overall lot. So you'd still be within that 10% of 45 to 50% based on whether it's a 1 or 2 story. The plot plan on the right shows shade structure on the upper left portion, as well as adding on to the back porch. So these are potential things that could be done, and you can see that the percentage doesn't go up to these increase of 10%, and that's just to demonstrate purely that the lots are self-limiting. You really wouldn't be able to go up over that percentage in most cases, and that's why we have those to demonstrate those points. It's the last slide. I'll be happy to answer any questions, as well as Amy, on any of the specific subdivisions, as well as generally the points that we made.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any questions or comments for staff? Commissioner Bianchi?
It's just a point of clarification. So with this proposal, would this be enough for most residents to avoid the need for a variance? I mean, does this kind of address that, or is that just based off of a case-by-case basis?
Commissioner Bianchi, I would venture a guess to say yes, in terms of, it depends on, obviously, anything could happen, but the variables are lot size, your zoning, whether it's SF7 or in these cases it would just purely be SF7, I guess, and SF6, but overarching it could be larger if we were to ever do a text amendment, which we've talked about at the study session. But yeah, I really don't see a situation where a variance for lot coverage could ever be a request on something like this. It affords so much, area for them to expand upon. A setback variance might be another issue, but not for lot coverage, I wouldn't think.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Ayler?
Thank you. I guess my question is, what happens when they're, say, 35% and it's 40%, so they got 5% to play with? And I don't know, I'm just using numbers right now, but could they use that leftover percentage for garage sheds, casitas, and then use the 10% for the other side?
Right. Well, let me make sure I'm stating this right. It's the 10% on top of what their lot coverage is overall, don't you? Yeah. So if it's 35%, then there would be a total of 45% with the additional 10.
What I think we're saying is that if they wanted to do a shed and that shed was within the 5% they still had within their lot coverage allowed by code, they could do the shed and then they would still have the 10% above that for open air structures. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, that's my question.
It would just be applied towards what is currently allowed in their lot coverage max, but not with the addition. The addition is for only open air.
So how would that get defined? Like, I mean, staff wouldn't, I mean, you guys would separate that out? I mean, maybe I'm picking too small of a...
I guess, you wouldn't, if the situation were they built a house on a lot and it was 30%, which, as you can see from tonight, it rarely happens anymore, then you would have that, you could add on open air structure if that were to be an open air structure like a Ramada, and you would have all the way up to 50%. If it was a 40% lot coverage, you could go all the way up to 50%. With that, if it was just all open air structures and you had 30%, say, of a house, enclosed structures. But normally what's going to happen is they're going to max it out at 39 or 40%, and then you'll have that additional 10%.
Right. I'm just asking, like, if you got to that point, you built the open air structure, and you're like, oh, wait, I didn't want to use that percentage for that. I want to use that for that. And I mean, I could see it happening.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I could see myself running into that.
Right. That's a good point.
So.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments for staff?
No, they were going to answer that.
Oh, they were going to answer.
I don't know.
Okay, so, we basically are in agreement with that. You would just have to delineate. You would go back and say, this counts towards your enclosed amount and this counts towards your open air amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
During the permitting process, right, for approval?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up. You know the drill.
I confirm. Rick Davis, Pipeline Consulting here on behalf of this time Meritage Homes. And thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a presentation, but I don't want to make you sit through it if you guys don't have specific questions. So I'll leave it up to you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Questions for the applicant? No?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
You bet.
Is there anybody here wishing to speak on this matter? We had a couple of gentlemen in the audience earlier who are now outside the lobby, but I don't see any, and I don't have any cards. So with that, I don't think there are any further comments needed from staff unless staff wishes to do so. Okay, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais. Who wants to start this one off? Commissioner Ayler, you've been kind of leading us all night, so batter up.
Okay. Well, I guess, I mean, I'm going across my head about it because, I mean, it's the 10% is a lot. I think now I might be getting lot coverages and our text amendment question a little bit that we were talking about, but I was thinking that we were looking at 5%, or my last comment in study session was talking about 5%, which is more conducive with what I see in other cities. But that might be what I'm thinking in a different session.
This is 5%, I think.
Well, they're asking for 10%.
On the request, I think it's, on the advertisement, says 45% to 50, 40 to 45,
Which,
55 to
down
50. For item number 12. Oh, 13. Oh, you're right. No, well, I guess number 12 is 55.
Madam Chair?
12 is 6 to 9 and 15%.
Okay. You're right.
We don't want to leave this offer till the very end after discussion. We're going to put it out there now. The applicant is willing to go to 5%. The 10% came from a comment that was made at the last study session where it was, we were saying 5% if they were enclosed, meaning the accessory structures that had garages and such. And then somebody said, well, I'd be open to more if it was open air. And so we went 5%, we gave the applicant an option, 5% for enclosed or 10% for open air, but they're good with 5 for open air because really what they want to do is offer shade structures to their owners, and that's what it all comes down to. So if you're good with 5%, they're good with 5%.
Okay,
Thank you.
So going to that, I'm more in favor at 5%. And then when it comes to defining one wall, two walls, I can see in design that you would, maybe want one wall, just because of how you orient it on site. So as open air, I would look at it as one wall. Two walls, you start really defining the space. And then I'm in favor for the 6 to 9. I don't see where it really hinders anything, and if it helps on design, still not understanding 100% where that does, but I'm all right with it. But I did have a question if we were dealing with a text amendment, but that's
not part of this,
yeah,
right? It's not under purview right now.
So right now I'd be in favor at 5%.
Okay.
And 6 to 9.
And
And
6
to 9.
And 1 wall.
And 1.
Just clarifying.
Okay, any further comments? Commissioner Bianchi?
No, I would agree with what was just said. I would agree as well with the one wall, because I think if you're trying to have outside space and if you're trying to have a serving area or something to build that into design, that might work well. I also understand the support for the side setback request, and I'm okay with the 5%, but it just kind of keeps going. We've had this ongoing discussion now of how are we going to continue to address this? Are we going to address it through a text amendment? Because we're starting to see, the last case at 3%, now we're between 10 and 5. At some point, we're probably going to have this discussion in a grander sense so that at least we can provide staff some sort of direction as far as what we're agreeable to for cases moving forward. Because if we open the door, we're just going to see more of these. So, but other than that, I'm okay with these requests. But like I said, if we continue to see these and chip away at it, my patience is probably going to wear thin. So other than that, I'm in support.
Any further questions, comments?
No, I agree with everything that's been said.
And I guess in closing, I would also say that I agree as well. I don't have such heartburn over the accessory structures, especially if they're open air. I think kind of that's what we want to encourage. For me personally, for the residents here in town, when you have your home and you want to have, we're in Arizona for a reason. A lot of people are. At least in Arizona for a reason, and you want to take advantage of your outside area when there is outside area to be enjoyed in the backyard, and if that means putting up a shade structure or putting up an open air area so that you can enjoy your backyard, and it's not attached to the house, it's not a permanent structure or an enclosed structure, and doesn't increase the size of the square footage of the home, I think it just adds to the value of the home and the community and for people wanting to live in Gilbert. And so I didn't really have any, there wasn't a magic number on that for me. So again, I would agree with the others, and if they're agreeable to the 5%, the applicant's agreeable, I am as well. So with that, do we have a motion? If we do, we need to separate them out.
Okay, I'll start with one, if
Okay.
somebody wants to pick up the next one. I recommend approval, for the reasons set forth in the staff report, move to recommend approval to the town council for Z12-16 as requested, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, except 10% should be changed to 5%. I
Okay.
think that covers it.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chairman Peterson, a second by Commissioner Bianchi. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
We ready for the next case?
Yes, we are ready.
For the reasons set forth in the staff report, I would move to recommend to Town Council that approval of Z12-17 as requested, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Second by anybody?
Does it need to be changed to 5% instead of
I think this is a 10% as well, so let's, yes.
Change the 10%
modify that
to
to 5%, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion by Commissioner Bianchi, a second by Vice Chairman Peterson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Anybody up for the third?
You want to give it a shot? Or you want-
Sure.
Go ahead.
Now that it turned to the wrong page.
You don't have your thing open.
I'd like to set a motion for GP.
No.
Oh,
Z.
nope,
Z12, 18.
18. Oh, yes. Z12-18 for reasons set forth in the staff report, and recommend to the council that we modify from 10% to 5%.
Okay.
Second?
I have a motion by Commissioner Ayler, a second by Commissioner Bianchi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, so I think that takes care of the public hearing portion of our agenda. We'll go ahead and move to the administrative items. That would be the minutes. Consider approval of the minutes of the study session and regular meeting of November 7th, 2012. Commissioner Bianchi, any changes?
Actually, I did have a question there. See if it comes up. There it is. On page 10 of the study session, it said we voted to initiate, I think, a text amendment, and then it had some affirmatives and some nays. So I don't know if that should be stricken from there and just said text amendment was initiated.
Was that the one for the HVC?
I don't know.
I think that was the HVC, and I think that we decided to actually do a vote because some people were for and some people were against. And we wanted it on the record.
I don't think I voted against it.
I don't think you did either. I think you voted for it. But, yeah, I think it was Commissioner Sippel and Commissioner Steiger that voted nay. That's where the problem lies.
Okay.
So the vote is good, 5-2, except that the nays should be Commissioner Steiger and Commissioner Sippel.
Very
Correct?
good.
Yeah, I was on that end. I
Okay.
was over here.
Okay.
That's what I thought. Okay. Good
Any other
catch.
changes?
No.
None for me.
If that's the case, then I would move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Bianchi, a second by Commissioner Sippel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Passes unanimously.
Good catch.
On to the communications portion of the agenda. A report from the chairman and members of the Planning Commission on current events.
Chairman, I just want to mention that we're going to do our open meeting law tonight. And we talked about it with staff, and you and I emailed back and forth with staff today that we'd like to suggest that we do the open meeting law training earlier in the year, anytime earlier in the year, because then if commissioners aren't here, we'll get the opportunity to attend the ones that are held by the town's, the clerk's office.
So
it
as a
gives
group, as a
people
commission.
gives us more opportunity to go in as individuals after the fact if you can't be here for the meeting itself. And otherwise, I don't think I have anything else except for Merry Christmas,
Happy holidays,
Hanukkah,
yeah.
Happy New Year.
All right. Next item on the agenda, report from the council liaison, which I didn't see him this evening. So we'll move to the next item, which is report from the planning services manager on current events. Mr. Mieres, Miss Linda Edwards, that's
Yeah,
right.
so we're
That's
teaming-
one of the current events.
Yeah, we're teaming up tonight, so thank you for all your service this year and have a great holiday.
And also
Thank you.
just a note that there is a balloon festival outside here on the municipal lawn, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. All right. Do we need a break before we start our training? Let's take a 5-minute break, 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene as a study session for our Planning Commission training.
Sounds good. Gives Phyllis a chance to set up.
Did they bring someone up for you?
If they buy before the zoning is approved,
No, before it vests or before the appeal period's over. Yeah. We're getting the signature in this case, but. The question will be how much we get. Last month. Am I good? You're good. Yeah. Went up to the top floor and sat in for. Yeah. I signed in and everything. Yeah. So I'm good. You're good.